A tropical low is developing in the Coral Sea this weekend, and depending on how this system tracks, we could be looking at significant impacts for parts of Queensland and possibly northern New South Wales. Worth paying close attention to. I've been examining the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, cross-checking multiple weather models and monitoring current conditions right across the eastern states. What we're dealing with is a complex setup that has the potential to develop into something more organised. Let me walk you through what's happening, what the models are showing, and what you need to know. Right now, conditions across northern Australia are typical for this time of year, but there is a fair bit of variability. Up in Far North Queensland, around Cairns and Innisfail, it's been hot and humid, 35 degrees with 80% humidity. That sticky, uncomfortable tropical air that makes it hard to get anything done. The moisture content in the atmosphere up there is significant, and that is feeding into what is developing offshore. Brisbane has been copping some decent storms this week. Yesterday saw a fair dumping of rain from what locals are describing as a freak storm, complete with a nice shelf cloud. Some areas picked up substantial rainfall in a short period. That's the kind of instability we've been seeing across southeast Queensland lately. Compare that to other parts of the country. Mount Carbine in Far North Queensland recorded 113 millimetres 2 nights ago from a single storm. That is a serious amount of rain in one hit. Meanwhile, other areas have been bone dry. Nambour really missed out this year. Storms just dissipate before they get there. Brisbane, particularly around Aspley, has had very poor rain this summer so far. It's just unprecedented how patchy the rainfall has been. Down in New South Wales, conditions are all over the shop. Carcoar on the central tablelands has been blowing a gale for days on end. Top of 23 degrees today, with an overnight low of 13 expected. That's quite cool for this time of year. The Dorrigo Mountain had no traffic light restrictions on Sunday for the first time in more than 20 years. That tells you how dry it's been in some areas. Armidale S only had 24.4 millimetres for January. Normal average is over 100. Plenty of storm action, but little water, just light mist and it's gone. The contrast across the country is massive, and it's about to shift as this tropical system develops in the Coral Sea. Let us talk about what's actually happening with this low pressure system. The Bureau of Meteorology has been tracking a tropical disturbance in the Coral Sea for several days now. As of the latest analysis, we have a broad area of low pressure sitting about 600 kilometres northeast of Cairns. Sea surface temperatures in that region are sitting around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. That's warm enough to support tropical development. What is driving this system is a combination of factors. We have a monsoon trough that's been sitting across the northern Coral Sea that is providing the large-scale circulation pattern. On top of that, we have got an upper-level trough approaching from the west. When these two features interact, they can provide the additional lift and organisation needed for a tropical low to intensify. The atmospheric conditions are certainly conducive. Wind shear, which is the change in wind speed and direction with height, is currently low to moderate across the region. Generally, tropical systems need low wind shear to develop and maintain their structure. Right now, that condition is being met. The other factor is moisture content, and as I mentioned, the tropical atmosphere is absolutely loaded with moisture at the moment. Now, let's look at what the weather models are showing, because this is where it gets interesting and where there is still some uncertainty. The Access model that the Bureau of Meteorology Australian Community Climate and Earth System Simulator has been fairly consistent over the last few runs. It is showing this low pressure system slowly organising over the weekend. By Sunday, it develops into a more defined tropical low with central pressure dropping to around 995 hectopascals. The Access model then tracks this system west-southwest, bringing it closer to the Queensland coast by early next week. The GFS, the Global Forecast System, tells a similar story but with some differences in timing and intensity. It also shows development over the weekend but suggests a slightly faster movement toward the coast. The GFS has the low making its closest approach to the coast somewhere between Cooktown and Townsville by Monday or Tuesday. The European model, the ECMWF, which often provides good guidance for tropical systems, is showing a bit more organisation. It suggests this could potentially reach tropical cyclone strength if conditions remain favourable. However, it also shows a track that is a bit further south, which would impact a broader area of the Queensland coast. Where these models diverge is mainly in the exact track and the timing of coastal approach. That is not unusual for a system that hasn't fully formed yet. As the low becomes more defined, the model guidance should converge. But right now we need to consider a range of possible scenarios. The key question everyone is asking is whether this will develop into a named tropical cyclone. For that to happen, sustained winds near the centre need to reach 63 kilometres per hour or greater, and the system needs to show sufficient organisation with a closed circulation. Based on current conditions and model guidance, there is about a 50 to 60% chance of this reaching cyclone strength. That is a moderate probability. Not certain, but certainly possible. Let's talk about potential impacts, and this is where we need to be specific about different areas of Queensland and possibly northern New South Wales. For Far North Queensland, from Cape York down to Cairns and the Atherton tablelands, you're already dealing with humid conditions. If this system tracks as the models suggest, you could see heavy rainfall starting Sunday night into Monday. We're talking potentially 150 to 300 millimetres over a 48-hour period in some areas. That significant rainfall that could lead to flash flooding, particularly in areas that have already been saturated by recent storms. Wind is another concern. Even if this doesn't reach cyclone strength, a well-organised tropical low can still produce damaging winds. We could be looking at wind gusts of 80 to 100 kilometres per hour along exposed coastal areas. That's enough to bring down trees and power lines, particularly in areas where the ground is already soft from recent rain. For those of you on the coast, from Cooktown to Townsville, coastal impacts need to be considered. A tropical low this close to the coast will generate rough seas and dangerous surf conditions. We're talking wave heights of 4 to 6 metres, possibly higher in exposed locations. Combined with higher than normal tides, there is potential for coastal erosion and inundation in low-lying coastal areas. If you've got boats, now is the time to make sure they're properly secured. Central Queensland, from Mackay down to the Capricorn coast, you are in a watch and wait situation. If this system tracks further south than currently modelled, you could see impacts by midweek. Even if it stays further north, you'll likely see increased shower and storm activity as moisture from the system spreads south. Southeast Queensland, including Brisbane and the Gold Coast, is less likely to see direct impacts from this system. However, you're already seeing increased instability. That is, not directly from this tropical low, but from the broader weather pattern. The monsoon trough activity and the general moisture flow are creating conditions for heavy storms. Brisbane got hammered yesterday, and that instability continues. Northern New South Wales needs to keep an eye on this as well. While direct impacts from the tropical low are unlikely, the increased moisture and instability could enhance storm activity along the coast and ranges. Areas that have been dry, like the northern rivers and the mid-north coast, could finally see some decent rainfall. Now, I want to address something that has been mentioned in the context of this system. Someone raised the question about this tropical low behaving similarly to Tropical Cyclone Alfred. For those who remember, Alfred developed in March last year and kept everyone on edge for quite a while. It formed in the Coral Sea, intensified fairly rapidly, and its track was uncertain for several days. The comparison isn't unreasonable. Both systems are developing in the Coral Sea during the wet season. Both have similar sea surface temperature environments. Both are dealing with monsoon trough activity. However, there are some differences. Alfred developed later in the season when climatologically we tend to see more intense systems. The atmospheric setup was slightly different. Alfred also had less wind shear to contend with during its development phase. The point is, while comparisons to past events can be useful, every tropical system is unique. This one will behave according to the specific conditions it encounters. We shouldn't assume it will follow Alfred's path or intensity, but we should take it seriously because the potential is there. Let me talk about some of the broader meteorological factors at play, because understanding the big picture helps make sense of what we are seeing. The Madden-Julian Oscillation, or MJO, is currently in a phase that is favourable for increased tropical activity in our region. The MJO is basically a large-scale pattern of enhanced and suppressed rainfall that moves eastward around the tropics. When it is in an active phase over the Australian region, we tend to see increased convection, more storms and higher chances of tropical cyclone development. Right now, we're in that active phase. The Southern Annular Mode, or SAM, is currently neutral to slightly positive. When the SAM is positive, it tends to push weather systems further south, which can influence the track of tropical systems. That's one reason why some models are showing this low potentially tracking further south than we might typically expect this time of year. We're also seeing fairly neutral El Niño southern oscillation conditions. We